Hello and welcome to the latest episode of Talk Franchise, our podcast series aiming to give you an insight into the world of franchising and, importantly, of franchising with Home Instead. My name is Luke Spellman. I'm Franchise Development Manager at Home Instead, and today I'm joined by Lee Chapman, Director of Brand and Marketing. We'll be diving into the importance of brand, how to maintain it on a national and local level, and how it works within a franchise structure. I hope you enjoy. Welcome, Lee. Thank you very much for joining. I guess before we jump in, could you introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, of course. So I'm Lee Chapman. I'm the Brand and Marketing Director for Home Instead. Been with Home Instead now for about 5 years. Prior to that, I've got a mix of experience across in-house brands, consultancy, and ad agencies. So I've really been around the block over the years. Prior to joining Home Instead, I was working for the Virgin Group of brands, rebranding a number of their businesses and kind of working on the full brand experience, which was really exciting with a brand like Virgin, with the reputation it's got and its desire to continue innovating. So hopefully brought a bit of that kind of essence and sentiment to Home Instead as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And how long have you been at Home Instead now?
Coming up to 5 years. So it's been an interesting 5 years. I joined right at the start of the COVID-19 pandemic. So I had 2 years of a real baptism of fire. We were kind of very responsive, very reactive. Had to make some quite big decisions in those early years. So I set my stall out very early with Home Instead. But in hindsight, we look back on some of those decisions and think they're some of the best that we made, actually. Home Instead performed amazingly well kind of from a quality perspective during the pandemic. Clients were very, very well looked after despite the situation. But the brand also kind of went to a new level during that period as well. We continued to invest. We continued to focus on championing older people during that period. And we really focused on how we deliver a safe, reassuring experience for clients, but also for their families as well, which was, kind of a really humbling experience, but one we look back on and we're really proud of.
Yeah, definitely. And I guess that last 5 years, there's been tons of movement really with the brand and the kind of things that we've got involved in.
Yeah.
We'll touch on some of them later, but yeah, it has been an exciting few years. And so we are here to talk about brand, and it seems obvious to us because we speak about it a lot. But what is brand and how does that differ to marketing, for example? I guess kind of an overview of that would help some people.
Yeah, of course. It's a big question. So I'm going to give you my thinking around what a brand is from the experience that I've had over the years, and that thinking has developed and evolved as the landscape has evolved. And I think if you went onto Google and searched what is brand, you would find numerous different definitions for what people think it is. I always start with what is a brand not. I think there's a lot of confusion there. It's not your purpose, it's not your why, it's not your values, it's not your corporate strategy. For me, the way I like to think about a brand and how I like to think about brand management as a result of that is your brand is a set of associations in the mind of your customer. It's a shorthand for how you can help them to solve a problem that they might have. And I think that goes for almost any brand in any category. And if you think about it like that, I think it allows you to be very systematic about the way you think about managing that brand.
Yeah.
And it was a very crude definition, but I quite liked what I think Jeff Bezos once said, which is your brand is what people say about you when you're not in the room. And brand management then is about ensuring that you are developing and reinforcing the associations you want people to have with you at every opportunity that you have. And that should be true from day one. And no matter how big your audience is or how big your brand is. And Home Instead is a great example of that. We're coming up to 20 years this year. And that's a massive milestone. But the way we think about the brand has changed massively over that time frame. In really simple terms, I like to think about this idea that people first buy brands they know, they secondly buy brands they trust, and they thirdly buy brands that they believe can address a need that they have. In the very early days of Home Instead, when it was 3 or 4 franchise territories around the country, there wasn't this kind of big national brand wrapper that sat around those territories. Building your brand with the audience that was available to you was very much about going out and really kind of reinforcing that message at a very local level, speaking to people that could and would influence people that were going to come into the market to buy care. Over the years, we're at over 250 territories now. We have a very clear framework for how you build that brand locally through community engagement, through local advocacy, through networking. But in order to continue to scale that business and reach more people and ultimately bring our amazing care to more people, we've had to add new layers of that as well. In terms of how we reach those audiences. And I always try to think about brand management in 3 kind of distinct areas. The first is distinction, right? People have to know who you are, and when you're communicating with them, know it's you. And I think we fall into a lot of traps sometimes with the proliferation of different channels and opportunities we now have to communicate with people, to constantly feel like we have to do something new. It's got to be new, it's got to be fresh, it's got to be different to something that we said before. A lot of the time you just need to say the same thing a lot to continuously reinforce and build those associations. I think the second is differentiation, and this is one of the hardest ones that as a brand manager you have to work with, because particularly in an industry like care, I guess it's true for a lot of franchise sectors, QSR's another kind of big one. They're highly competitive. But in care specifically, people don't really understand the service that you're offering in the first instance. So there's a huge amount of education and advocacy that has to happen for the service itself. To then be able to clearly differentiate from somebody else is a really, really challenging thing to do. But what you need to avoid doing is being different for the sake of being different. At some point, there is going to be a breakdown between what you say is different about your business and what people actually experience as being different about your business. And the only way you can really effectively deliver differentiation is if you truly understand what it is your customer needs, understand how you can effectively address those needs, and what it is about you that is meaningfully different in that moment. So it's not about being different from everybody else as such. It's about being meaningfully and relatively different to those people. So first, being distinctive, just knowing who you are. Secondly, focusing on differentiation. And thirdly, distribution. And franchising is amazing for that. We're able to reach a scale through our network that I think is unrivaled in our sector, actually. Would we have been able to do that without franchising? Probably not. Would we have had the passion to do that in the way that we do without franchising? Probably not. Would we be recognized as this national brand, a real safe pair of hands that people can trust, with strong values and strong quality, but have that strong local presence that's kind of really deeply embedded in the community without franchising? Probably not. So you have to kind of think about, how do I take my message to the place that people are? So it's all well and good saying, the best thing in the world, or creating the best advert in the world, or, the best sales pitch in the world. But if you actually don't get that out to an audience consistently, that's, kind of, your whole strategy is going to fall over at that point. So you have to pair kind of really strong codes around your brand, colors, logos, names, ideas, patterns, whatever it might be, that let someone know it's you. It's got to be meaningfully different to the people you're speaking to. And we've been really, really focused on that. And then you've got to distribute that message in a way that kind of reaches the audience of people that you're trying to speak to.
Yeah.
And if you think about it like that, you can think about it as a system. And ultimately, that's what franchisees want to buy into. A tried and tested system. I think the thing that many companies don't recognize is that a brand is a commercial asset. It's a fundamental part of your business strategy. It isn't your business strategy, but it should be a strong reflection of and respond directly to your business strategy. But if you're able to do what I just talked about, develop your brand in a systematic way, focus on, for us, those kind of 3 areas of brand management, build a really kind of systematic way of kind of reaching audiences and telling them the things that they need to hear, your brand should be able to make sales easier, help you grow your market share, reduce price elasticity, a number of different things, that are ultimately beneficial to a franchisee, and for them to have the confidence to buy into a brand that understands how to do that, I think has to be a really compelling proposition for franchisees. So I would say this, I'm very biased, but I think, when you're building a franchise network, really thinking about how you scale that brand in a systematic way is such a fundamentally important part of your strategy.
That's a really, really great overview, and I think there's tons in there that we could dive into. One question that kind of came to my mind was, I guess that brand ends up being associated completely with marketing activity, but what you mentioned there was it almost indicating that it goes a little bit deeper than that. Is it fair to say that your brand is also reflected in kind of the operations and the processes in your business too? Like you can't have a brand that says one thing and then someone answers a phone in a totally contradictory way. So is even the way someone answers a phone, the way someone answers an email, the speed of responsiveness, does that form part of brand too, or does that distinctly connected but separate?
I think the answer is yes and no. I think yes, you would always want a product, a service, an experience to correlate directly with everything you say.
Yeah.
I think that has become more common thinking over the last 10 years or so than kind of when I was still making my way around, different kind of brands in an ad agency, where we focused very singularly on how do I create an advert and how do I run that advert on, on TV or radio and as many times as I possibly can.
Yeah.
So it's definitely a fundamental part of brand management, thinking about the various different touch points that people then have with your brand. Do people do that? No, I don't think they do, which is why it's a yes and no answer. It's an incredibly difficult thing for any organization to do, but particularly one that's scaling.
Yeah.
I think in the early days where you've got a small business, a small number of customers, you're not dealing with significant volume, you really can focus on the critical experiences that somebody has with your brand and how they then relate back to the things that you say. But I think the biggest mistake a lot of brand managers make and a lot of businesses make is almost separating what the brand says from what the business does.
Yeah.
And there's a great quote from Michael Porter, kind of one of the biggest thinkers in kind of marketing theory, who said, people always ask me, is marketing a back of house or a front of house function? And he's like, it's neither. Your marketing and your brand is just a manifestation of your back of house functions in a way that is meaningful to the customer. And I've always kind of held on to that. I think that's a really interesting take on the problem. What I would say, and what we try to do at home instead, is be very intentional about how we design those experiences and those touch points.
Yeah.
And that's something that Virgin were fantastic at. Their entire purpose is kind of experiences people want to be part of. And you have to think, kind of even in the lowest moment of somebody's experience with a brand or a product or whatever it might be, how do you make that magical? How do you make that something they want to be part of? So for the airline, that's how do you make kind of sitting on the tarmac more entertaining? You know, how do you make being at the airport slightly less kind of slightly less difficult for the user? And we still try to do that, you know, kind of with everything that we do at home instead, because we are dealing with people in a very emotional state, actually. You know, dealing with somebody whose mum or dad have had a fall, or whose mum or dad may be showing signs of memory loss, who maybe is taking on the responsibility of being a carer for an older person. If you promise through your advertising, you know, that kind of we see you and we hear you and we'll help you find a way through kind of this situation, but then you pick up the phone and you sound almost inconvenienced that person, you know, is ringing to engage with you. That's a really poor brand experience, actually. You know, kind of, I think the gap between what you say and what you do widens significantly at that point. So it's hard in franchising, I think, you know, kind of to achieve that. But if you're very intentional about the way you design that experience, if you're very kind of intentional about how you explain the rationale and the importance of doing that, if you're very intentional about how you work with your franchisees to design it, I think it can be the difference between, you know, winning in a category and losing. And this is kind of, you know, the most trodden trope in marketing, but be obsessed with your customer. I think, you know, that's what it all comes back to. It's very tempting to become obsessed with yourself, or obsessed with your operation, or obsessed with the data, or whatever it might be. All of those things are great, you know, kind of they should be a consideration. But your first and foremost consideration should be, how am I obsessed with the customer, and how am I obsessed with delivering the best possible for the experience for the person in that moment? And that's how we try to think about it now at home instead.
And I guess, you know, you mentioned there that it's a highly emotional time. Typically it's a point of distress, right? That someone thinks, I'm going to reach out to a care brand. Maybe they've never even heard of any of the care brands because they've never had to think about it before. And what they're met with is a long list of brands that say they'll help you and they deliver the highest quality of care and they're there for your loved ones. But as you say, if that experience when they pick up the phone is inconvenient or unhelpful or more distressing, that company's ruled out, isn't it? It's like that's off the list. And so, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And so, how then? I suppose when there's branches and a head office and it's a non-franchise model business, head office can decide something and it's implemented in theory the next day. You know, there's no collaboration required across all the brands, not in the same way certainly that is in franchise. And so as it grows, how do you maintain consistency? Because everything that you've said points to the fact that whether you're in the Highlands of Scotland or bang in the centre of London, you need to be having the home instead experience. Yeah. How do we ensure then that brand, it feels truly local, but feels completely consistent on a national level?
It's a really, really good question. And I think you used a really important word in it, which is collaboration. And actually that would be true in any organization. So if you're working in retail and you own a chain of 2,500 retail stores, you're going to go in and fundamentally change the way that that retail environment is set up, that those people service their customers and everything else. Kind of collaboration is still a fundamentally important part of what you do. I think it starts with, have you defined and communicated a very clear vision for where it is you want to take this business and take this brand, rooted in some kind of understanding of the customer?
Yeah.
And then have you consistently reinforced that at every opportunity that you've got? Secondly, have you worked with whoever it is on the front line, whether that be franchisees or colleagues in a corporate environment, to truly understand kind of what the barriers to delivery of that vision are? And have you worked with them to try and design that experience in a way that isn't you saying, this is how it should be done, but collectively trying to work out, how do we believe we can do this in the most effective way? Thirdly, have you then removed the barriers for them to doing that? I think that's one of the biggest things in franchising. Is it's very easy to become separated from the frontline operation if you sit in a national office, but by working closely with those people, really understanding, kind of if you have communicated a vision, or you believe you have set, kind of some kind of operational guidance, but it's not being implemented, kind of why? I think is the first question you said. What have we not done right here that we could be doing better going forward? Or where have we missed the mark in terms of, the guidance that we're now providing? And what could we learn from people that are on the front line? So I think all of those things are fundamentally important in designing the brand experience that you want to be able to deliver for your customers. And consistency is very, very important. I think that sounds like an obvious statement, but I just want to reinforce this is very, very important. Again, kind of marketers and brand people can become a bit obsessed with new things. If you go to a marketing conference, you'll typically kind of hear 2 or 3 people talk about the foundational kind of thinking around marketing, but a lot of people talking about purpose, or talking about virtual reality, or talking about, kind of innovation hubs or whatever it might be. Yeah. But very few people actually talking about brand building and talking about marketing. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a distraction, and many brands aren't very good at being very consistent. I think the average tenure of a chief marketing officer is less than 2 years, so I feel kind of very privileged to have been able to do this for 5 years. And I think, push a relatively consistent message. But there's 2 things that consistency can do, which are really important, particularly in franchising. Number 1, build salience kind of in the mind of the person that's going to buy your product. Brand building takes a long time to pay back sometimes. So it has to be paired with really good short-term kind of sales activity. Yeah. I like to think of kind of you earn the right to go and build the brand by getting everything else right. Mm-hmm. I'll talk a bit more about that in a second. But there will be a lot of people who are not in the market for your product or service today. But what you don't want to happen is that when they do come into the market, you're in the situation you mentioned a moment ago where you're having, a very, very expensive and very, very difficult fight with every other brand to try and win that customer's business. Yeah. By the time they've made it to that point where, they're analyzing kind of multiple different brands, you've kind of lost part of the battle already. You want to build salience. You want to be clearly defining category entry points. You want to be thought of as the go-to brand within that sector or category, and sort of building salience, building the distinctiveness that I talked about earlier is really, really fundamental to that. Mm-hmm. The second part is the buying our product is very complex, actually. We've talked about it being very emotional, but just practically, it's very, very difficult as well. We know a lot of people, when they're going to buy care, don't know where to start. So if you have a sore tooth, you go to a dentist. If you've got a cold, you go to see a doctor, a GP. All right, mum or dad are starting to kind of experience some memory loss. Who do I talk to here? Kind of you don't know where to look. And you can become very, very obsessed with the data, which says, kind of X number of people came via our website, and X number of people called us on the phone, and X number of people clicked a Google ad. It's just the last thing they did, in a very, very complex and messy journey up until that point. So having a consistent brand helps you to link together all of the other things that you do in a more effective way. Yeah. And that's particularly beneficial in franchising, where we want to be doing a lot of local networking activity to build kind of brand recognition, brand awareness kind of within the communities that we operate, be that with healthcare professionals, be that with professionals, be that with directly with families, be it with, prospective clients. Mm-hmm. It takes a lot of time to keep going back and reinforcing that message. You could go in with the best sales pitch in the world, as I mentioned earlier on. tell them why Homestead is so fantastic, tell them all the wonderful outcomes you can deliver for clients, talk about how you're different or you believe you're different to everybody else in the sector, the chance that they remember all of that, the chance they remember who you are, pretty slim, right? But having the support of a distinct brand that is easy to recall, has built those strong associations in the mind of the customer, make a lot of those ideas and a lot of those sales pitches significantly more sticky. So consistency, consistent identity, distinct kind of brand assets and codes, strong, consistent messaging, I think are absolutely kind of fundamental, but they're even more important in franchising, where you're asking people to go out and kind of be your sales force, be your service delivery partner, be all of those different things. And it's been a big part of our focus at Home Instead over the last few years, really getting under the skin of what is the biggest problem our customer faces. How can we uniquely address those issues for them and support them? And thirdly, how do we make finding us, believing in us, trusting us as easy as it can possibly be?
I'm just putting myself in the mind of a prospective franchisee now. Everything that we've kind of spoken, I mean, it applies both sides, but we've spoken about the client, the person receiving the care or the family. But a lot of what you've spoken about is very true. But if someone's never had an experience with marketing at any point, and they want to get into franchising, maybe they've approached Home Instead or another brand, and in their mind they're thinking, that's all well and good, but I don't know how to implement this. It worries me to think that I have to kind of reflect this national brand. And how do we as Home Instead provide the support and guidance to make that as easy as possible, so that actually they can be part of that large, consistent national brand, and actually we are all singing off the same hymn sheet?
Yeah. So first of all, we're in a very fortunate position today at Home Instead, where we've done this hundreds of times before to great success. The failure rate in franchising is extremely low, but the failure rate within Home Instead is really, really, really low, if existent at all, right? Because we've done this so many times before, and there is a clearly defined playbook for how to do it, a rigorous support structure to help you get there, and most importantly, a really clear understanding of who we are as a brand, who it is we're trying to talk to, and how we go to market both nationally and locally. Yeah. So we always kind of talk, and I make it, a personal mission to always talk with prospective franchisees about the brand and about the practice of marketing within the Home Instead franchise system. We have numerous different training programs to just upskill those new franchisees who may not have a background in marketing, may have not engaged in marketing historically, about who our customer is, how we think about marketing effectively, kind of how you give yourself the best chance of doing it effectively, kind of within the territory that you've just purchased and decided to operate, and how we like to strike a balance between national and local branding. But the most important thing for us is having a real clear line between what we are saying nationally and what is being delivered locally. Yeah. And that has evolved and developed significantly over the years. I like to think kind of about what is foundational for a franchisee to do, and just ensure that they focus on that in the first instance. So don't get caught up in some of the more complex disciplines kind of within the marketing mix. Focus on delivering an amazing service. That's the best marketing you could possibly do. Just deliver an exceptional product to your customer, because word of mouth still makes up a significant amount of Home Instead's business today. People love what we do and they want to tell people about it. And those people come to us because they believe and trust, the other people that have advocated on our behalf. So first and foremost, just deliver an amazing service. You don't need to be a marketing expert to do that, right?
Mhm.
You need to be passionate. You need to be driven. You need to kind of have discipline and structure.
Yeah.
Most franchisees, are very, very well equipped with all of those skills. Secondly, price your product effectively. Kind of if you go in too low or too high, if you haven't done market research within your territory to really understand where you should be pricing your product, that's, I think, a big pitfall you can fall into very, very early. So doing that work up front to position yourself properly within the marketplace that you're operating in is really, really important, because that's going to be different in Aberdeen to Windsor to somewhere in the southwest in Cornwall.
Yeah.
Everyone is going to have to look at that slightly differently, and really focus on who are the people that are going to make a difference to my business really, really early.
Mm-hmm.
My experience over the last few years with brand marketing has been very much, how do we reach the biggest possible audience that we can, that we think at some point may be coming into our sector or be buying our service.
Yeah.
But really, in those early days of operating a franchise, you can build an amazing kind of business in those first few years just through advocacy and just through word of mouth and just through community engagement.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the foundation of any homestead franchise. I'm not going to go into any more detail about how we do that, because I think that really is our secret sauce in terms of what differentiates us at a local level to most other kind of businesses in our sector. But we provide guidance on how to do that. We provide materials that you can go out and utilize.
Yeah.
We provide programs of work that you can kind of do within the community to strongly advocate for older people and their families. And we're really, really clear on kind of what our expectations are. And then slowly, as you make your way through that franchise journey, you can start to layer more things on, right?
Mm-hmm.
Kind of you've exhausted kind of the word of mouth and the advocacy bit. You never stop doing it, but kind of it's reached. You want to scale faster than that can offer you. So you start to layer in kind of other forms of sales oriented marketing. You might start to do some stuff online. You might start to be working with directories, whatever it might be, to help grow the business. And then you start to layer on top of that some more kind of brand-oriented activity, brand-building-oriented activity, et cetera, and then kind of we sit neatly on top of that with a strong broadcast message, that acts as, like I say, the wrapper around all of this activity. But each of those things are foundational, and what you tend to see is kind of when one of those starts to fall away, all the stuff that you're doing up here, it's wonderful, but it doesn't have, the commercial impact that you wanted to have as a franchisee, because ultimately you need to grow that business. You need to make money so you can reinvest in that business, so you can serve more customers, so you can reinvest in that business, so you can serve more customers, and reinvest in innovation, reinvest in quality, reinvest in all the things that really matter. So we are very hands-on with our support. We're very clear and directional in terms of what it is that we want franchisees to be doing.
Yeah.
And we are very, very kind of clear on who we believe our target audience is, how we think Home Instead can address it, what you can do locally to impact that, and what outcomes we expect you to see as a result.
I think it would probably help people a lot to understand that actually you don't need to come in with a marketing background, and actually your entire day is not going to be spent thinking about this necessarily, but you have a part to play in it, and that the support that we provide and the guidance and the direction, like you say, is kind of the thing that you need to think about, right? And that's really what you buy into in franchising, isn't it? When the conversations that I might have, on the phone with people inquire or at shows, it's kind of all about that. It's how can you guide me to be part of this brand, not like I would like to join Home Instead because I'm an entrepreneur and I want to do it differently. People are actually buying into a structure.
Yeah.
So no, that's great. And
I go down to franchise offices and I go out with maybe somebody who's recruiting for care professionals, or maybe I go out and go to one of these community events. It might be a dementia cafe, might be a kind of singing for the brain group. It could be anything. And I just watch kind of franchisees and think, if you bring that passion and that drive and that desire, to make a difference in your community, we can support you with everything else.
Yeah.
Like you say, kind of, it's a structured system. It's a tested, proven system. It's worked hundreds of times before. When it doesn't work is when you're missing that person to really drive it. So, if someone's thinking, I want to get into franchising, oh God, but I'm really worried about, managing a Google Ads account or, going out and doing X, Y, and Z. Don't worry about that. We can support you with all of that type of activity. The real thing is kind of, have I got the desire to deliver this effectively in my community, to make a difference in my community, to kind of be that beacon for families and for older people in my community. And I think if you've got that, you have every possible chance of succeeding.
Yeah, with the right franchise brand behind you, effectively saying that, like, this is now our approach to this, and you can help us and the wider brand by implementing X activity in your area. You don't need to go and work out what that is.
100%.
But actually, the local feedback from all of our 250 plus sites is what sort of what's in the cauldron that I suppose determines what X is. And is it fair? I guess it's a bit of an open question, but so we speak about brand as a thing, but obviously across the country there are nuances in all of the various regions and towns and cities. Does brand have to be slightly agile to the area that it's in? Like if you're in deep Cornwall versus an urban setting, Manchester or London, does the brand flex within that, or actually does one size fits all?
I think the core principles of the brand typically stay consistent. You think about any amazing product or service kind of that you offer, that you buy rather than you offer, that you buy, whether that's a retailer that you love, whether it's a confectionery product that you enjoy, whatever it might be, it's a brilliant product consistently delivered when you have a great experience. So I think there are certain things that you have to stay true to wherever you are in the country. I think what really does change is how you take that product to market within your territory, the way that you connect with the audience that you need to speak to, the way that you kind of demonstrate value through your service offering. That's really, really important, because the way that care is managed in, I don't know, the Highlands of Scotland is fundamentally different to the way that it's managed in central London. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's not done in the home instead way, but the way that you satisfy the needs of those customers is somewhat different. So it's about kind of really pairing a structured understanding of what your brand is, what your customer needs, how you deliver your service in a unique and differentiated way, with a really clear understanding of your local kind of area, the needs of your local customers, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a really, really fine balancing act. I think more and more through the proliferation of digital channels and digital media, we are seeing more and more brands kind of really focus on how they tailor the communication aspect of their brand locally or personally to a customer. There's some amazing brands that have done this kind of recently. Cadbury's is a great one, over Christmas, very, very compelling brand proposition, very consistent, but highly personalized, kind of experience that they offer to the customer. So those things are available to us now, and that's really important. You look at a great brand like Marks and Spencer's, its retail footprint in certain parts of the country will be fundamentally different because the needs of those customers are different, but it is still unashamedly and unmistakably Marks and Spencer's. And I think, that is possible in any product or service. It's definitely something we try to think about at Home Instead. We want to be unashamedly and unmistakably Home Instead in every pocket of the country, but we do want, kind of local experience, local expertise, local knowledge to really filter through into how that unique value proposition gets delivered to our customers.
And over time, does it shift and change? So we've kind of spoken about maybe the geography But as the world changes around a brand, how does the brand have to react? I mean, I suppose the principles are set. Like what you offer is pretty fundamental, right? 20 years ago to now, the delivery of high quality care has been the focus always. But at what point does it shift and change, if at all? And how do you know when to do that?
Yeah, it's a really good question. The answer is it has to change. I think as the needs and the habits of your customers change too. Again, the fundamental principles, like you say, stay strong. Yeah. But the way in which you deliver that product or service has to evolve. So there are always macroeconomic kind of things that impact the way people think about your product or service. COVID-19 fundamentally changed the care industry, right? Like it did many, many other industries too.
Yeah.
And it's your responsibility as a business to respond accordingly to all of those different, changing needs, but do it in a way that feels right for your business.
Yeah.
And I think when you see people start to compromise on the core foundational elements of the business, whether that's in the customer service that you provide, whether that's in the environment that you deliver it in, whether it's in the quality or whatever it might be, I think that's when you really start to see kind of brand value become eroded quite significantly. So we have always focused at Home Instead on relationship-led care. It's a fundamental part of who we are and how we believe the best possible care can be delivered. That is in terms of, continuity of care, introductions and matching with the right care professionals, kind of being with the client for a long enough period of time that you can actually build those meaningful relationships. And you see it come through in the reviews that we get from our customers. But what families are also telling us is, actually, the care that we now need is significantly more complex than maybe we would have seen a few years ago, where it was companionship oriented, kind of mum or dad feel slightly isolated socially, or kind of they're not as mobile as they used to be, or they just need a bit of support around the house type thing. Those needs shifted during COVID. They sort of still existed, but there's these broader lifestyle patterns that have changed almost everything about our lives. We work from home more, we work in a less asynchronous way, kind of people have moved out of big urban centres and back closer to maybe where their mum and dads live. So the need they have of us has changed. What hasn't changed is that we still fundamentally believe, whether we are just going in and helping with somebody with odd jobs around the house, or whether we are coming in and delivering more clinically oriented care to you in your home, you should still have a strong and fundamental relationship with your care professional. You should see the same person or same small group of people every single time. You should never have a stranger on your doorstep. Those types of things have never changed. So as a business, I think we still like to try and retain some pioneering spirit. I don't believe there were many people delivering this format of care when Home Instead was first brought to the UK 20 years ago, or first set up 30 years ago in America. And, that was a bold move. People didn't understand it, and to this day, a lot of people still don't. The default thinking is mum or dad have to go into a care home and they have no other choice. Yeah. So we are always trying to position the brand in a way that competes with those sort of prevailing attitudes or prevailing biases or whatever it might be, and trying to set ourselves apart against the other options that people have. People also still believe that it has to be organised through the council, which is or the local authority, which is seen as the kind of arbiter of social care. Whereas actually, again, we're telling people you have choice about how you want to age. You have choice about the relationship you want to have with the people around you. You have choice about how you engage within your communities. But that took a certain amount of sort of evaluated bravery to bring that to the market and say, we think we can change behaviors, fundamentally. So we've tried to retain that pioneering spirit as we've grown. That's seen, Home Instead make some really big bets on how people engage with the brand and the service, big investments on, kind of alongside our franchisees, big bets on service offering, kind of how do we believe people want to engage with a brand like us, and how do we think we keep those people at home in a safe and comfortable and kind of happy environment as long as we possibly can. Big bets on the company structure and support framework for franchisees. So you have to keep innovating as you go, and you have to retain those principles that the brand demands that you stay true to if you want it to be kind of valuable, and you want it to mean something to your customer. But you have to be able to innovate within that framework to deliver things that they need, that respond to their kind of changing lifestyles and everything else as well. So easier said than done. That's a tough thing to do. It requires a huge amount of control. I don't mean that in terms of telling people what to do. A huge amount of kind of control of the variables, that exist within any business. It requires a really good understanding of who you are as a brand. If you are in any way sort of uncomfortable with your identity and uncomfortable with who you are, that brand erosion can happen so quickly. We've seen it numerous times over the years where people have really lost a sense of kind of, where did this business come from? What does it stand for? Who is it trying to engage with? What benefit can we provide to them? What do we hold true in our kind of founding principles, etc.? So it's difficult, but it can be done. And I think franchisees can play a really fundamental role in helping you to do that. Infamously, the Big Mac was the creation of a franchisee, and we've certainly lent on franchisees within our network who have had a really strong appetite for innovation and have helped us to deliver new products and services in a way that is true to the brand, but we may never have envisaged if we just kind of sat at our desks in the national office and tried to dream it up.
Yeah, so that information coming from the local level back to national office is it's huge, really, isn't it? And
the speed at which it comes back to you, as well. Kind of, if you aren't in a position where you've got a really good, strong working relationship with your franchisees, where you're not in a growth partnership with your franchisees, where you're not communicating frequently with your franchisees, that is really kind of where blind spots start to appear. So you have to be kind of listening to the front line, but you also have to be confident enough to react quickly, and nimble enough to be able to kind of test and experiment and kind of work out whether this is the thing, kind of or it's as big as you think it could be, whether it's worth rolling out, across the entire network. It gets more difficult with scale, but it's possible if culturally you're oriented towards that type of communication and that type of collaboration.
So again, putting myself in the shoes of someone thinking about franchising and maybe approaching Home Instead, they see Home Instead as this brand that has done things well, but that exact point you just made, that things become more difficult at scale. It might be a question on someone's mind, thinking, am I 5 years too late? Am I 10 years too late? Is it too big that it's lost its brand or its core values? What would you say to that?
We are at the vanguard of a socio-demographic shift that is only gathering pace. So if you look at the census for, I believe it was 2023, for the first time in the history of this country, there are more people aged over 65 than under 15. That is a generational change that we are going through. An unprecedented change, that's going to require kind of really bold response at a governmental level, at an enterprise level, but also at a local community, social level. People have to take, kind of some kind of responsibility for those changes. It's something we're very mindful of at Home Instead, and are trying to react to as best as we possibly can. So any idea that, the best days are behind us, or that, this market's come to some kind of period of maturation, where there's no opportunity left in it, would be wrong. It is going to go through such significant change and such significant growth over the next few years that the challenge will be different. and franchisees come and go within franchise networks, and you do hear franchisees say things like, I was a great owner, for that period of this business, but the next phase requires a different type of person to come in and run this business, either to take it to a new scale or to respond to a different challenge or whatever it might be. But if you're looking at a business like Home Instead, these are going to be some of the most exciting and the most fun years I think we've ever had as a business. The opportunity is huge. I think we're in a really good place with our franchise network to respond to those changes. We've got a brand that's really well positioned to address kind of the new needs of the market. As I say, kind of it's not showing any signs of getting smaller. That's attracting more competition, again, which, if you look on the bright side, drives innovation and improves quality. Competition is a good thing in a market. So it's not going to be easy. You're not coming in and sort of into a well-established brand, and just kind of, feet on the desk and watching the phone ring and, kind of counting the money. You are coming into a business that's going through a massive period of transformation, serving a society that's going through a massive period of transformation. And we like to look at that as an opportunity rather than a risk. So I would say to anyone thinking about Home Instead, the best years are ahead of us.
Yeah, I think it's a really, really good point that actually the opportunity is bigger. And I suppose are there two brands running side by side where we almost have the Home Instead that speaks to the prospective franchisee? We have our service at National Office is franchisee support. That feeds then into the local care delivery. Do you see what I mean? Is that the same brand, and actually we have to be thinking about both arms, or are there two? Are there two brands running side by side?
I think there's one culture.
Yeah.
You hear so many people say at their 10-year renewal or whatever it might be, Imi was, kind of fresh out of kind of university when she sold me this franchise, kind of that idea of continuity of, support and kind of really strong focus on kind of quality and everything else, I think is as true to the franchisee as it is to our other customers as well, in very, very different ways. But a lot of people come to Home Instead because they fundamentally believe in what we do. Care is not an easy sector to operate in. There are challenges in attracting and retaining staff. It's highly competitive. For natural reasons, you see kind of high attrition of customers or clients over your time, but you build really strong bonds with all of these people, and it can be really, really challenging. It takes a particular type of character, I think, to define a vision, build a team, create and maintain a culture, to be driven all the time, kind of against all of those things. And those people are naturally attracted to Home Instead because we've been doing this a long time. We've been doing it really well. I would say we've been the best, kind of in this sector. But we've been doing it really, really well. So I think kind of the whole culture, the whole ethos of the brand is something that naturally connects with people. So similar to kind of whether you're in the Highlands of Scotland or you're in kind of central London earlier, the brand has to orient itself towards the people that we're speaking to, but fundamentally the pillars of the brand are the same. And that is who Home Instead is. That is how we work with clients or franchisees. That is how we think about, problem solving on behalf of anybody we work with. It's how we think about collaboration and support and everything else. So I don't think they're different brands. I think they're the same brand. I think it's the same culture. I think that culture runs through our franchise network as well, which is great to see. It's just kind of making sure that it's relevant to the audiences that we're speaking to. That's the job that we focus on every day.
Yeah. And as Imogen and I have conversations with potential new franchisees, in a way, we're thinking about the brand and what they fit into when we're considering their suitability and alignment with that very thing. Because if you let people in that are not going to adhere to the brand that we've created and the things that are fundamental to it, I guess that's one of those internal ways that you can, the cracks start to show and the erosion begins, I guess.
And what I love about meeting prospective franchisees, which granted, usually do on the third, maybe the second or third kind of time they interact with Home Instead, is the amount of preparation that those franchisees have put into demonstrating why they are the right person to take on a Home Instead franchise. There's always that wonderful All Blacks quote about kind of leave the shirt in a better place than you found it. And I think a lot of people feel that same sense of responsibility when they buy a Home Instead franchise. And one of the greatest qualities of Home Instead is saying no to people that aren't right. And being in a position where we're able to do that today. It's kinder to them as a prospective franchisee. It's kinder to our clients, and the communities that they live in. And it's kinder to us, it keeps, like you say, kind of equilibrium kind of across the franchise network, knowing that everybody is driven by the same mission, driven by the same values, kind of working within the same support structure. I think that's how we can go out and make a meaningful difference at the scale that we want to in all of the communities that we operate in.
And that's I suppose to let the wrong people in, I suppose, is one of those internal factors that can start to degrade what you've created. There's probably in fact, we've touched on a lot of those internal factors and the things that you've got to keep really, really clear. What external factors might impact a brand? For example, technology and AI immediately come to mind. If that fundamentally changes how a brand has to operate, not necessarily Home Instead, but any brand out there, that could begin to erode those foundations that, in a way that sort of feels out of your hands, I suppose. When firstly, I guess, what might those external factors be? And also, how can you equip yourself against them?
So the one that I focus on a lot is expectation. I think that's the thing that can change the way people, or the associations that you've worked hard to build in somebody's mind. Those expectations are then influenced by lots of other things. They might be influenced by lifestyle changes. They might be influenced by economic factors. They will almost certainly be impacted by technology and the role that technology has now in people's lives. I think a lot of these changes are not fundamental. So we have seen technology kind of proliferate almost every single sector you could possibly imagine. I actually can't think of many, that don't utilize some form of new digital technology today. And they change the expectations that people have, but they don't necessarily change kind of the motivations and the kind of intrinsic value that people apply to something, if that makes sense.
It does,
I think when things like Spotify emerged in the music industry, we saw ticket prices for concerts go up, right? Because people still wanted to go and experience that band live. Actually, if anything, it drove more people to want that kind of real visceral experience of watching live music. And I think as technology starts to kind of infiltrate different parts of healthcare and social care, we're going to see some amazing advances. The ability to identify certain conditions earlier, the ability to spread our workforce across a greater number of people, the ability to keep families up to date, with kind of what's happening kind of with their loved ones. All different ways in which, the sector is going to be hugely benefited by new technology. But I think underneath that, there's always going to be a role somewhere in that for human connection.
Yeah.
So from a brand perspective, we can produce creative significantly easier than we used to.
Mm-hmm.
We can use digital technology to automate certain forms of ad buying. We can use email automation to kind of get messages out to people that you may have previously had to go and post through people's letterboxes. We can do a whole number of different things. We can programmatically buy out of home billboards in 5 minutes. It's incredible. But just being able to do that isn't that impactful unless the thing that you're placing on those channels or the experience that you're delivering through them is meaningful to the customer.
Yeah.
So we are going to see technology play a bigger role in marketing. I think the big risk is becoming too obsessed with the technology and not obsessed enough with the customer. Mm-hmm. It should always be, how does this technology work in service of the customer? And I think one of the big things that we're dealing with in care today is it's going through its kind of compare the market moment where people are offering new ways to come and buy the services that we offer, which I think is great. It offers a different option to the customer. Does it always drive the best possible outcome? Is it always in the best interest of the customer? I think we're yet to see kind of whether or not it is. But that is going to disrupt for a certain segment of the market the way they come and buy what we do.
Yeah.
For us, that means really doubling down on the brand.
Yeah.
And the value that, kind of that brand has to people, and really being very, as I said earlier, kind of systematic about how we use and leverage that brand to connect with people that want to buy our product, to really show them what our value proposition is, and to convince them that, kind of if they want the best possible care for their loved one, delivered in the way they would deliver it themselves, working in partnership with families,
mm-hmm.
Home Instead might be the brand that you want to come to. So I think all of these things are going to change the expectations people have of how you operate as a business. You have to evolve with that changing landscape. But understanding how you respond to it and staying true to who you are the things that are going to make the fundamental difference.
It's like if you get that brand bit right and you think about that always and ensure that you're not kind of veering too far off what you'd created, I guess it allows you to navigate that landscape clearer. So that they're not challenges and pressures, but they're kind of new opportunities and
that's it. Like things like technology aren't going to go backwards, right?
Yeah.
They're only going to go in one direction. So they are going to become even more available to us. I think the question is kind of how do you not completely erode, kind of the value of your brand and end up in that race to the bottom? But how do you focus on, delivering that amazing brand proposition through these new channels and using these new tools? I think if you are confident enough to know who you are as a business, you should be able to respond really effectively. And I think anyone who doesn't have that framework or that set of guidelines by which they make those decisions should think really hard about kind of what they need to do to develop that.
Mm-hmm. So we've covered a lot, and we probably are drawing to the end here, I think. But I suppose, again, I'm always going back to this. I'm trying to think about the experience for someone who's thinking about franchising. Yeah. Within the franchising, we've spoken about a brand within the home care sector. The franchising world has a ton of options too.
Yeah.
And someone knows that they want to run their own business and have actually decided that franchising is the route, provides them with some reassurance and some support and some guidance and an existing brand to be part of. But there's 10 to choose from that are all really good. How does one determine which of those good 10 is the one for them?
That's a tough question. It's a very, very big question, and I'm not sure that I know the answer.
Mm-hmm.
I think it comes down to, like any big decision you have to make in your life, kind of what am I good at? Where are my skills going to be best utilized and applied? What am I passionate about? Kind of, is there something that I really want to go and do, or a difference that I want to make somewhere? And lastly, kind of, what is it that's going to get me out of bed in the morning in year 3 of running this franchise, where I'm still as passionate as when I first picked up the phone, but I may not yet be at that point where I'm really reaping the rewards of all my hard work from buying this franchise business. Kind of, any business has a break-even point. Kind of, there is no that I can think of, otherwise I'd be doing it. Business where you can just start kind of making money with no investment, kind of, or any hard graft on day one. So those first few years of running any kind of business are hard. So to give yourself the best chance of success, you need to work out what your capabilities are and work out what you're really good at and where it can best be applied. Secondly, kind of, are you passionate about it? And then thirdly, kind of, am I still going to be feeling that good about it? Year 3. And we work with all of our franchisees, kind of, not just on the business health, but on them as people as well, to make sure that they're fully supported kind of through that journey. I think that's a commitment that we've made as a franchisor to every franchisee that we work with. You get your kind of business development partner that will come and spend time with you to keep all of the things that matter in those early years in really good health. But we really focus on making sure that this is a journey you're enjoying. That a journey that is utilizing your skills, that you've built the right team around you to support you and everything else. And whether that's a Home Instead franchise or a McDonald's franchise or a driver hire franchise or whatever it might be, each of those businesses is going to have their own way of doing that. But I think what I would say is, whatever decision you make, do it with conviction, because none of those journeys are going to be easy. There'll be great success stories. Speak to other franchisees. Take time to get to know the business, before you fully commit. But when you commit, jump in feet first, kind of, with all the energy that you can possibly summon. Surround yourself by brilliant people, and give yourself the best chance of success when you do it. I think if you're half-hearted, or you think it's going to be easy, or you're not fully committed to whatever it is that you set out to do in whatever franchise sector you're in, you're not giving yourself the best possible chance of success.
A really good answer to a tough question. But that's it, isn't it? That you first have to decide what works for me, because actually we are quite confident in turning some people away that might actually think, oh, I'm desperate to run a Home Instead franchise. And after a series of questions and a few stages of long conversation, it's not clear to us that their driver or the reason for the passion has a personal connection. It might actually be about how lucrative the industry is, or the aging population that you mentioned before, those being the focus. That's on our mind too. But what we have to see is a person who's going to deal with the emotional turbulence of running a care business. Because at the end of the day, not only does a client unfortunately die and you no longer can deliver care to them, that also has an impact to your income. Yeah. It's kind of this double hit. We're so invested in our clients and our 100%. And our care professionals that there is this double hit, and so it's going to be really hard. And therefore, we have to turn people away that we think that have really excellent skills that would be better suited somewhere else.
Yeah.
So no, I think that's a really, really good point. Asking yourself why, and then ultimately going to a franchise brand and asking them how they're going to support your attitude, and that's the combination, really. That's the winning franchise combination.
We can give you everything you need to know to run that business, but we can't tell you why it's the right thing to do for you.
Yeah.
there's an amazing quote from Sean Parker, one of the early kind of Facebook founders, and he said, when you start a business, you spend so much time eating glass, you end up enjoying the taste of your own blood. And I think it is not for everybody. Mm-hmm. Running a business is not for everyone. And that is the big decision I think you have to make before you go and start out on your own or before you enter franchising. Because like you've just said, we will support you and give you a framework to build that business. But we cannot get you up in the morning and tell you it was the right thing to do. Yeah. We can tell you how to do it, but we can't make it happen for you. So franchising is a wonderful thing. The success rate of franchising compared to starting a business is great. Mm-hmm. It's filled with very, very passionate people. It's filled with amazing brands. Being at the BFA Awards last week, had the chance to kind of really see the huge success that so many people get through franchising. But the one thing that was very clear was that all of those people felt that it was some kind of calling for them to run a business. I think if you don't have that and can't find that, it becomes an increasingly difficult project for you to take on. Definitely.
And the awards highlights the fact that there are so many options that go out and look. And actually, if Home Instead's not the brand, is it a different care brand that does something slightly different, or is it a totally 100%. Different sector altogether? And do that research and demand the answers from the franchise brand. It's a partnership. Yeah, we're both sides are working on the same thing. So
I think the most important thing is that people continue to start businesses. It is the backbone of Britain, the backbone of our economy. It's wonderful to see 250 plus franchises, kind of independently owned and operated businesses, kind of in their own right, operated here through the Home Instead brand. Creating jobs, making an impact in communities, supporting families, giving them, peace of mind, comfort, happiness, all of those kind of things is wonderful. So I think for Britain today, the first and foremost objective is kind of to start businesses and give people the best possible chance of succeeding. Mm-hmm. If franchising is the route you want to do that, fantastic. And like you say, there are so many great brands out there that you can choose from. Just do your homework, both homework on yourself and homework on the sector to find, the right option for you. But if you want to start a business and you think it's right for you, do it.
I think that's a great way to close off our conversation, Lee. And thanks for everything you've shared. It's been really, really interesting to hear that. And it's what's quite exciting for me actually is to realize that brand and marketing seems like this highly complex and difficult thing. And every time I threw a hard question at you, it always came back to the same things, that actually getting that bit right makes all of the other things far easier. And so, I think that's some really important that I've taken from this. So, but yeah, Good. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.